So basic, thank you. So basically, how this group works is that we've been meeting for several months to really do a little bit of a deeper dive into that transition between middle school and high school and how important it is that ninth graders are really well suited and on their way to be successful in high school, and then that the incredible predictor that some folks have found of what we called ninth grade on track. And we realized that words matter and that was probably not a good title. So I'm even using that gingerly because I don't want us to get derailed on the real work. And one of the things, and I know Lou and Dee Dee can speak to this, is really about this is not a deficit model of whether you're on track or off track, rather it is really ensuring that all students have the opportunity to be prepared and know what's ahead of them and what opportunities they have to start building out what they have for their future, their dreams, and how to get them there. Hey, Jay Nora, so glad you could join us. And so basically we've been meeting, and I'm sorry we didn't get to meet last month. And I know that it's just been really tough for people, and I know the timing is really rough, is that what we've done in this group is come up with some general recommendations and then suggested actions that could put these recommendations into action. And how this works is that we don't dictate to anyone what you have to do or any shalls. Rather, it is a group of folks who take the feedback of the continuum, take the feedback of this work group and lived experiences and the voices of our citizens to say, this is really what we should be focusing on and how can we work together to get this to happen. So what we're going to do is look at what has been collected so far. We have not altered the language on this. We've just compiled it and try to compartmentalize it. And what we want to do today is flesh a lot of this out because we need to get to a point where we feel good about our recommendations and some suggested actions. If you have heartburn over any of this, I'm not married to any of this because this is not our work. This is the collective work. Lou, you and Jay Nora have definitely been, and Dee Dee have been on it since the very beginning. And you know how it ebbs and flows. Interpretation gets lost sometimes, words get misplaced. And so if you feel like something's in the wrong place, speak up. We really like to massage out what some of these things mean, because the next steps for this, just so you know, is once we have a draft together, on the 14th, we'll be going before the continuum to share what the work groups have done. And really, this drives our work and what we advocate for as far as whether that's funding or policy change or just action. It could be a combined communication plan. It could be elevating. That's why I have Melissa on here, KDE's work on MTSS. Like some of this work aligns beautifully, but maybe we need to collectively help elevate that message instead of just KDE. So it's more voices speaking about those opportunities and resources that are already available. So we're going to look at this. We did get some recommendations also, or some information that Robin will share here in a minute from an actual group that is called Standout Practices After COVID. And one of the things that we continue to talk about, we keep hearing about, is that the things that worked before COVID may not work right now for the kids who are in transition, who are freshmen. They may have missed most of middle school. They, you know, there's some definite holes that we can't assume fully maybe what were great strategies in 09 or 10 or 12 or 17 will even work with kids right now with some of their struggles that they faced. It's been altered a little. So it's something we wanted to share out with you guys of a resource we found. And so really, we're going to walk through these recommendations and actions, be very honest. Tell me what you don't like, what you like. Robin and I will take notes and we will adjust it to make sure it reflects what you guys feel is appropriate and what you'd like to take forward. So Robin, I'm going to turn it over to you to share that and get us started.
So I just shared my screen. I hope that you all can see the recommendations. I dropped them into a PowerPoint slide so that as we're talking today, I could just actually kind of wordsmith as you all have a conversation. So if you remember the initial set of recommendations that were coming out and the thoughts, we had kind of categorized them into three sort of buckets. The first one had to do with a ninth grade on track definition or a framework for ninth grade on track. And so we felt like that these were very much related to how do we define this, or what are we talking about when we say ninth grade on track? And then we'll have another slide that has the standout practices or the best practices related to ninth grade on track. We'll look at those. And then the last one is really about data sharing, data communication. So we'll have three kind of buckets that we'll be looking at together. So this is the first set of ideas that came out. So we thought we would just start with an open conversation. Just what are your reactions to this? And maybe we want to do a little bit of wordsmithing or refining so that we have especially the right verbs about what is it that we really want to see happen. And then if you see anything that could be collapsed or combined, we'd love to hear that. And then finally, as we go through each slide, we also want to kind of prioritize. If we had to rank these in order of priority, which ones would have the most impact, which ones are most actionable. We'd love to hear your ideas about that as well. So I'll stop talking now, and I'd love to just hear your thoughts and ideas, and I'll do my best to edit this slide as we go. That's why it's not in presentation mode, so you all can kind of see what I'm doing as we talk.
Well, I'll share a couple thoughts. I love it, Robin, that you wanted to concentrate on the verbs. I think that's really helpful in these kind of actions that we want to take. So I'm wondering about the second one on implementing KDE's evidence-based practices through MTSS. I feel certain that's guidance. Melissa would know more than anybody on the call. But I'm wondering if our work, being a bit external to that, might be to promote implementation of KDEs, or to promote and communicate, or thinking about our role as an external recommender to school districts. Galvanize around, I'll start looking for a better verb, but some kind of a verb there. And then my second observation was on multiple ways to communicate with parents and social media. Is that a sub-bullet of the one before, or is that somehow different from the communication plan in the item above?
I think we could probably combine it, is what I'm wondering, Lou, of putting all that together specifically around communication with parents. What do you guys think?
I think it could go somewhere in that third, I guess it's third bullet.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, good catch there. That.
And then I'd love to see that focus group being right up there under the revisiting of the definition, just so that we can, by common practice, we listen to kids sooner rather than later.
Lou, do you see that as its own item, or is that kind of an action step under developing that definition?
So if this is charges to ourselves, I would love it for our team to conduct a focus group or have a chance to invite some middle school students in just to have this conversation with them on the part of our work group. But if this is a recommendation to schools and districts, then conducting a focus group, or amplifying student voice by conducting a focus group with middle school students, that amplification I think is really important. So that if they were using this as a bit of a checklist, doing that sooner than later might be helpful.
I think that's a really good point, Lou, that you bring up. And I think the charge could be, because one of the things that we're kind of looking at is, as we have these, and this because you've lived with us for 2 years now, is that having those recommendations, now we're looking at, depending on what the CEC thinks in a couple of weeks when we talk about it, is kind of evolving into task force around communication or more collection of data. Like specifically for this one, I'm so glad you said that, because I almost hear you say also to me is that's almost like two different things, right? Like good practice for districts is to stay in strong communication with middle school students on how to make things important and relevant. Like that's almost like a promising practice or something that we could incorporate, and we can flesh out the language on that. But I really like that through both lenses, because I think it could say both, right? Like here's what we should do and consider when we're working through this. I think in partnership with KDE, because they do have a lot of those structures already in place of how we could help collect data for them or be supportive. And then also what schools and districts can do to make sure that it's relevant and timely or something. I don't know. I like what you're saying on that.
Which goes back to a question I had as the conversation was unfolding. The first one on revisit and reconsider is where is the task given to, like, to whom is that given? Where does this charge go? Maybe I'm not understanding it.
So it's a great question. So Melissa, how this has worked in the past, and not that it has to be exactly the same as last year because we're always moving, is that what we'll do is once the recommendations and suggested actions are written, then what we do is we share those with KDE, KIA, CPE, the institutions, the districts, the K groups, and we're going to do a better job of expanding that to say, some of them might say, I already do this. Like we have a protocol for this. And so we'd like to share that. So what will happen is that we can't dictate these things. These are suggested actions, and we give them to the agencies to see how we can either A, create a group, a collective group. Like last year, we had a cross-agency group that KIA led around FAFSA completion. So we could all message the same thing, right? Instead of these random things. So it can be anything like that. It's not us telling like KDE, you shall, it not at all, but KDE might say, well, we already have this. So we already have a group that we could help disseminate information, or we can, the collective group could be a recommendation around the workforce turning into a task force around middle school voice and family voice, and like how to really strengthen that transition point or whatever that may be. So it gives a little bit of autonomy, I would say, but no dictation of who it has to be, because it's really a collaborative group. I don't know if that helps, Melissa, or if I've muddied the water, which is highly possible.
No, it helps. And then I see too that we need verbs for of the sub down below the parent guide
Yep.
in multiple ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Jay Nora, I think you were going to say something too.
I was just gonna piggyback off what Dr. Young was talking about. The focus group or whoever was talking about that. If that's geared with us, I think it would be important to just make sure that we specify collecting data from middle school students from across the state. I think that's just being now in South Central Kentucky, but at one time being in Western Kentucky, I think the feeling is that only one part of the state voices are heard. And so I think for this to be meaningful and for people to buy into it, it would be important to show in some way that this data was collected clearly from far west to far east to far north and south, just to make sure we have a good representation of how middle school students feel like they need to be prepared, because how they feel like they need to be prepared in Fulton, Kentucky could be totally different than how they feel like they need to be prepared in Wayne County. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it makes total sense. Yeah. And that's what we even try to do early on, just with the initial stakeholder feedback. You're 100% right though. And that, Jay Nora, has been the norm around really elevating voices that have historically been underserved. And that what works in one region of the state does not mean it works in another, and to be cognizant of that. So I really appreciate you saying that, so we can be explicit in our language. I think you're
and I feel like that feedback could possibly drive our definition of ninth grade on track. I think it might have multiple pieces to it, depending upon where you are in the state of Kentucky. Just because every high school doesn't necessarily offer the same things. And so I know we kind of want to be explicit, but it may have to be broad. I don't know. I'm just thinking about just making sure that what we put out truly does represent the state of Kentucky and not just certain regions.
Lou, I appreciate your verb offerings. Advance or elevate. I like those. I'm just writing stuff down here.
So I want to make sure that I'm capturing kind of what you all are saying. I think I'm hearing you say that as part of this development of a definition, we would definitely want our work group to hear from middle school students. But then we also might want to think about, and I'm sure that I need a different verb here at the beginning of the second one, but that we might want to elevate as a best practice or recommended practice to hear from middle school students at the district level in like raising the importance or relevance of being on track throughout ninth grade and high school. Is that, am I hearing you correctly on that?
I also forgot something else. I'm sorry. Just thinking about a vehicle or a tool to use. I don't know if we still do this or not, but Operation Preparation, I know they do that for 10th graders, or they used to, and for 8th graders. So that could be, if that is something that is still mandated by the state, that could be a vehicle that is used to gather this information, because those 8th graders have to complete that Operation Preparation plan. And it's kind of like they're planning ahead for their career or whatever, or their career track in high school. So that could be a tool we use to collect data.
Okay.
Anything else on this one? This is really helpful.
So Amanda, I don't know if we want to do this now or if we want to come back to it later, but do we want to even think about, we kind of narrowed it down and kind of massaged to 4.
I
And
think
so
that's pretty good, actually. Like,
what order we would put these in? Like if we said, okay, we can have 2 of these, but we can only have capacity for 2. How would we rank these?
I would keep all 4 on. 4 main points. I think they're well taken. What are your all's thoughts? Do you want to rank them? Do you want to keep them as is? How would you like to do that?
I say no, because I think they're all important. They all have their place of importance. So that's just me.
Yeah,
I'm
I
very
think,
comfortable with 4 because I think they're solid. I'm sorry, Melissa, I interrupted you.
no, I was just gonna agree with the 4, and coming in as a fresh eye on this, it makes sense to me that the initial part is gaining that common language, common understanding, revisiting what is it that we're referencing. Then you have a way to hear from the students, then you're getting that communication plan. So I think, I don't know how you would get to the bottom of that without doing some of that prep work at the top. So I don't know how you would isolate it.
I'm very good with it. I think they're solid, and you all narrowed them down really nicely. And Melissa, that makes sense to me too, of like the actions that would make sense.
And this may come in one of the other action slides, but let me just put in a parking space for Kentucky United We Learn, to make sure we thread that work together with CEC like we've always intended to do too. 3 big planks are vibrant student learning experiences, innovation, especially as it relates to assessment and accountability, and deep community engagement around measures of success.
Yep. So tell me, Lou, in your thoughts, I'm putting you on the spot. And I agree, we've talked about this with the Kentucky United We Learn. How do you see framing that? What would be the best approach for that? To make sure it's captured? What sticks out in your mind, I guess?
So a lot of it will probably happen when with the full gestalt of the CEC recommendations. But one example, if I look at this one alone, something that comes to mind for me is that, and I want to say this in such a way that I'm not in any way disrespecting multi-tiered systems of support, because I'm not. But I'm thinking about the full spectrum from tier 1 to tier 3 and the student learning experience. So one of the things that I believe to my very core is that freshmen will do better when they are so engaged in the work of learning that they want to be at school, so they improve their own attendance. Not being at school is not an option. So in that, for me, is the plank of vibrant learning experiences, so that deeper, more personalized learning for every learner is stamped across this slide. So, and because that is, you know, the bold new vision for P12 learning, making sure that we bring that level of intentionality to this, to the CEC work holistically, I think is important. I
Yes.
don't know that it matters so much that we pick it apart,
Sure.
but wherever there is a natural connection to be made, I think it behooves us to make it.
No, I think that's super helpful. I completely agree. I don't want to silo individual random acts of education. I really want it to be a robust, holistic. And to me, this is so heavily focused on, especially the K-12 and the United We Learn point. And I agree with you that to me, it stuck out even in our definition of what that would be. And my hope is that it would, as you related it back beautifully back to instruction, engagement, and really that measure of success, even attendance, is that it's innate. They want to be there, right? They and find it that it's important to be at school, to engage. You know, it's not just showing up for compliance, so mom and dad don't get in trouble and you sit in the class and fail, but it's true engagement and true learning, like a true deeper learning and engagement for all kids. And
back to
yeah, go ahead.
Back to your question about how we might incorporate it, just as a technical exercise, I think a few of us could sit down and we could code this against United We Learn. So that whole section on implementing a comprehensive and meaningful communication plan is in fact about deep community engagement in their measures of success. So it would be simple enough to cross code this. I'm not sure that's really helpful in terms of pushing out the information, but we can know internally that we've been diligent about the interconnections. And we can certainly share that with the full continuum as a way to crosswalk all of the recommendations to United We Learn and vice versa.
Right.
And then in our United We Learn efforts, then we crosswalk to the continuum.
Yes.
In a consistent pattern.
Absolutely. I know. I love it. I think that makes so much sense. And it's authentic. Like it's not a forced thing, but it really shows the overlap. No, I love it.
If there's something that doesn't code, it just doesn't code.
Right.
It doesn't make it right or wrong.
I'm wondering too, because MTSS is an initiative under the United We Learn, if we took from evidence-based practices through MTSS and substitute some of the language of the broader United We Learn, are they called pillars? Is that what the three?
Big ideas is
Big ideas.
as
Okay,
much as we can nail Jason down to.
Okay, big ideas. And so that's just that as you were talking, I'm wondering about that.
Yeah, if that even said including evidence-based practices through MTSS.
Yep.
I think the more that we can show connection, the less it will stress people out because they won't see it as another silo. It will be the work, right? And like, even when we get into the granular piece of the work in transition, it still has those same connections with the big ideas, right? I mean, so it's not another thing, or it's not the KDE is doing this and CEC is doing this. Is like collectively, this is what we're doing, and this is how it's demonstrated specifically in this area. I think that's super meaningful. I like it. And for me, when I think of MTSS, I'm thinking an incredibly strengthened tier 1, which impacts tier 2 and 3. I mean, like, and we have neglected tier 1 for so long.
Yeah, it's too easy to jump right to 2 and 3 because we want to save kids, and I get that. So that is not a criticism. But vibrant learning experiences ought to be, you know, the very core of all things tier 1.
Yep, I love it. Good. Are you guys good to go to the next one? Good. All right, let's go.
All right. So let me grab this. Amanda, is this a good time to share the standout practices?
Yeah, the link that Robin just sent is practices from the pandemic. They're not novel, but I think it's interesting. If you can take a look at it on your
You all
chat.
want me to bring them up here, or do you want to bring them up on your own computers and then we can leave this one on the screen?
I'm pulling mine up.
Okay.
But I don't know about everybody.
Yeah, I can see this fine.
So just for a little context, as you all are reading, Amanda and I had gone back through the best practices that ESG shared with us several meetings back. And this work was linked in some of what they had sent to us. So we did a little digging into this website about this Center for High School Success, and found these standout practices. So much of the conversation has been about just the implications of the pandemic. So we just thought it was helpful. Love the idea of standout practices, even if we don't adopt the ones they have here.
So I'm wondering how the first and last bullets might be different.
I think they could be combined. I think it's just where we've compiled feedback from the CEC and the work group. It's probably just duplicative.
Yeah. The last one feels much more actionable to me.
I agree.
Okay. Should I bring these examples down here,
Sure.
or just to make sure we don't lose anything here? Let's see.
I think there will be a lot of head scratching and questions around a policy change related to restorative practice, state level policy, district level policy, school level policy.
We
I-
felt the same. We just didn't know if you guys had insight in how to flesh that out a little more. We didn't want to take it out since it was a recommend or a suggestion, but we would welcome your all's feedback on either fleshing that out or changing it or what. I know it was a conversation at one of the tables. I'm just not sure that we captured anything beyond with context, I think.
You know, I think policy changes will happen. I don't think it will happen at the state level, because the state just wouldn't be in the business of, you know, diagnosing, no prescribing
Yep.
a practice. But again, maybe this is advance, elevate, promote restorative, disciplinary practices, and maybe a word there to better meet the needs of a diverse student population, or what we're after is more just systems. And I'm really hoping that the word justice doesn't fall out of favor these days, but and reduce exclusionary practice or something. I don't know how descriptive we want to be, but the idea there is, you know, it's no longer chutes and ladders. You can't get being excluded is a whole lot harder these days.
Lou, can you say the words you said again about justice or a just?
Sure, but again, this may be, politically charged too, so Aaron will probably tamp it down some, but advance restorative disciplinary practices to better meet the needs of diverse student populations, ensure more just systems, and reduce exclusionary practices. And there's a ton of research about it. So it only becomes political if we allow it to be. But we want to, tamp down the charge. If there is a political charge to it, I generally don't care. So somebody needs to moderate me in that process. So. So I'm lamenting that we've lost policy in that, but I'm not sure. I mean, we could put the word in there.
I don't know that it belongs, Lou. I think you're right, because we can't force people, and that's not a policy we would change at state, but we could promote.
But if it says
practices,
promote restorative disciplinary policies and practices to better meet needs of diverse, then we haven't lost the policy perch necessarily, but it just depends on whose those are, whose levers those are.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm not sure that we have enough meat on the co-ops bone there to, if somebody saw that, what would we be talking about?
I wonder if we incorporated the co-ops for regional support and community partnership along with the statewide professional development. Because that's what they a lot of times provide that support.
Yeah.
I don't
Within
know.
co-ops in schools, yeah.
Mhm. And we can massage out that language and run it past you guys, but at least that'll kind of give them their meaning of what they would do and how we would partner with them. If that's what you guys think will match us.
And Robin, I think this is just a typo. It says Canva, but I think you mean Canvas.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. Tell me more about the last one. What would the grant be to identify Kentucky's set of evidence-based practices? I think either identify is the wrong word, or I don't understand what the grant would do.
So don't we, maybe I'm wrong, but as far as like the use of evidence-based practices, like our continuous improvement process kind of, and I don't want to say makes, but I feel like it makes us use those, especially if a school has been identified as TSI or CSI. So would we be identifying those, or would we be supporting the implementation of evidence-based standout? I don't know. I'm asking. I'm asking because we
That's my
legit
question too.
And then in the literacy, what is it, Senate Bill 9?
Mhm.
I don't
Yes.
know. I'm not the policy side.
You are right, Janora. It
I
is.
probably should pay attention more to it now. Leadership. Senate Bill 9 basically states that your literacy program K3 has to be evidence-based. So like that's in law now. So schools should be doing that. So should it be that not necessarily, maybe it's identify and support, or identify and support implementation of evidence-based standout practices. I don't know.
I I think that this was about the standout practices related to post-secondary readiness.
True. Okay, sorry. Get me back on track, Ms. Rob. Yes.
Well, I think that you're right about identifying support implementation, but I think this one was more related to how can we, we probably would not be able to find funding to like have this massive, let's do this in every district, but to kind of do a PDSA and let's see if, try out some of these practices like, college visits and summer bridge programs to bring people, transitioning them from 8th grade to 9th grade. What sorts of practices could we pilot in these districts and gain some momentum and some data around those through a pilot program? I think that was the intent of this last one.
That makes sense. And then, I mean, I don't know, KDE has a page dedicated to evidence-based practices. So if we could connect with that in some way, we're showing that collaboration between the two entities, that we support the evidence-based practices that KDE is promoting. And I don't know, they may not, I don't think they've really pushed practices for college career readiness like they've done everything else. So maybe that would be something we can collaborate with them to see, hey, how can we push evidence-based practices in this area more? I don't know.
I was also thinking back up on that partner with co-ops. There are some places that systematically could possibly be avenues, vehicles for communication. One is I have an MTSS community of practice, and there's an MTSS point of contact for each region, and we meet regularly. The statewide school counselor network has a cadre that meets 4 times a year. And then there are just some different communities of practice that I think potentially there could be some very intentional communication with those communities of practice that would probably, when there's something that is meant to be communicated, I think there would be some mechanisms to do that would strategically get each of the cooperatives, aside from a co-op director point of contact meeting, something like that.
Melissa, should that go up there at the top where I put it because it would apply to all of those, or do you want it specifically?
Well, I think it fits with that, just where it's partner with co-op somewhere in that area.
Oh, okay. So bring it down to that one.
I just know when there's a very strategic way to know that if we say co-ops, okay, this is a way we know all 8 will get it. Those would be some avenues to do that.
Sure.
I think maybe that one just could be more explicit, Robin, if it said partnerships, partnerships including leveraging existing communities of practice.
And I think that school counselor one, when you're looking at scheduling and different topics that are in the standout practices, that school, the statewide, I think this is we're in the 2nd year of that, where it's 4 times a year that the school counselors from across the state come together, in addition to their conferences, and that would be an avenue to get some of those standout practices communicated to school counselors. I might be off base on that. I was trying to think of ways where the message could be disseminated.
No, I think this works.
Is the connect ILP to strategic advising? What is, I'd like a little more on, I understand what that means, but what does that mean in terms of the larger audience? What would we?
ILP, so when I was mentioning earlier, operation preparation,
Yeah,
ILP is the document they complete during that time. And so like it's supposed to be like a tool that they use for career planning.
Right.
But I really think I think it started off like that, but I think over time it's just become a check mark, a compliance thing. So if there was really some advising, some
Right.
counseling with it, it could be a really great tool to help push some of the things that we're trying to talk about here.
so I guess my question is in the verb connect, just in terms of if this were sent to a larger audience, I get what you're saying, and I understand those tools, and I think they're wonderful, and I do think they need to go beyond a checklist. I'm just wondering how to, that may be for another time, but that connect may not be the exact verb for that.
Melissa, I think you're onto something there. It's another one of those examples where this is kind of what would happen at the local level, but we have to kind of think about what's our leverage point related to the ILP. So I think you're surfacing something that we really need to talk about.
Yeah, I think that inspired me to think that the rewording would get at Janora's point a little bit more directly, but would answer Melissa's point about the audience. What we heard unilaterally was that the ILP is irrelevant, and in fact, it is in most places at best a compliance checklist. So what we want to do is we want to beef up the relevance, but we want to do that by connecting it to strategic advisement. Let's talk with kids about how to make it relevant to them instead of making those assumptions ourselves. Engage families in the conversations about how it would become more relevant to them. I'm thinking like a district person there more than I am a state level person, but these are standout practices that we are putting out in the metaverse for people to remind folks about things that should be happening back in the district. So increase is probably not really strong enough either. We want it to matter.
Lou, would you even connect that with the statewide professional development and communication plan? Like it's one of the bullets on there about the connection around the ILP.
Yeah.
I just wonder, and not to, because it's very important and everything you all have said is 100% accurate, but I'm wondering if there's some way to,
yeah, it's cross-cutting.
relevance.
I think it's absolutely appropriate for it to appear more than once. And the conversation, we all just desire it to make a difference. And we've never gotten to the place where it does yet.
Lou, I'm dropping in some words that I
Yep,
heard
I
you
like
say.
Yep, I like it.
Okay.
I still want to talk to the kids about it though. We can plan a big ol' ILP for them that has absolutely no value in their value circle. So even if it's student and family engagement.
I like that, student and family engagement. I was typing in the chat, the families part I think is a really good piece of it to help people see beyond the compliance part.
I have to hop off here because we're dismissing in 10 minutes. I'm sorry.
Oh, we're gonna miss you, Janora. Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you,
come
Nora.
back. I'll try to come back if we get done. I don't know. It depends on how people won't cooperate in the car ride line today.
It's a
They're
Monday.
coming out of a holiday, so it's
Good
gonna
luck.
The Monday after a break, they can't
I
remember how to
came-
do it.
I came in, the fire alarm was going off, and half my classes didn't have power. I said, Monday.
Welcome
no,
Monday.
we're not doing this. So, okay, I'll see y'all later.
Bye,
Thank you.
Denora. Thank you. Is there anything else you all would add to these or to this list of recommendations?
I'm not trying to reorder these, but I was just gonna bring those two down. I think these three we have not talked about at all, and I don't know if you all want to do anything with those before we move on.
I think the implement bridge programs is the most direct statement we've made. That is
Probably one
a
of my
standout
favorites.
practice. Yeah, that is a standout practice. Let's do it.
Yep, I agree.
I think on the Blackboard and Canvas one, what we mean is, earlier in their career. So certainly by middle school, but I think it probably goes without saying.
Yeah, I don't know, because I think when we get into sometimes more rural areas, they might not think of it without it explicitly stating it. They may think that's reserved for
Dual
students.
credit.
Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't have to be just rural, but I'm just thinking of some of the places where I go and they, without explicitly unveiling that, it would be reserved for an elite group.
Yeah. I just don't know that everybody has Blackboard and Canvas available for the cost associated. There's other tools that they have that are more the standards for, K through 12, I guess. And a lot of them are using what's free, or they've purchased LMSs that have those type of functionalities in it that aren't those. I mean, so it's similar practices, but it's not a targeted by, certain topics. I mean, they may be using Google, Google, it may be, majority of our districts are Google districts now. They're using Google for Education. Some of them are paying to use the premium Google services now. Others are still using the free version. Some use Teams. Some of them are using Campus Learning, switching back to that because the state's been paying for it. And then others have purchased their own LMSs that we have a list of what they're using out in our digital readiness, listing. I don't know those off the top of my head, but that was just recently updated. So we can get more information about what districts are using if that is helpful.
So do we want to maybe bring that one up also as a communication and dissemination of standout practices, and just say when possible, to give students the opportunity to experience these different technology systems, or do we want to leave it as its own?
So I might go with what Dee Dee suggested, call them learning management systems, then you don't have to name them. Who knows what higher ed's going to be like
Good idea.
in the future. But I think the idea here is also in keeping with vibrant learning experiences, is the opportunity to experience various learning management systems to personalize learning through learning management systems is what I'm trying to say. Personalization happens really in a lovely way if the learning management system is robust and is ready to meet the individual child's needs. And then there's this ancillary benefit that they're also experiencing what it feels like to learn using learning management systems in higher ed. So there's kind of a double benefit.
Am I getting there, Lou?
I mean, I love leading with personalized learning, love it. It's bold. I'm not sure that's what we meant, but if that's what we meant, I'm 100% behind it.
Well, I definitely don't want to change what we meant.
Takes it to a good new place, in my opinion, but
Are they really trying to, are we really getting them to try to experience a learning management system or experience online learning through robust systems or something like that?
I think this came out of one of the groups the day that we were in person in CPE, and I saw it on the gallery walk. And I thought it was worthy of a specific note. I think they really did mean learn to use a learning management system, Canvas or Blackboard, so they'll know what they're going to get into in college. So I'm not sure they actually meant middle schoolers. I don't think they specified, but it could say middle school and high school students. I think the intent of it was around giving students the opportunity to experience learning management systems, to personalize learning and better prepare them for college would work for me if we wanted to lead with the learning management system. I'm not sure. That was not our group, Dee Dee. You and I were in the same one.
Yeah, right.
I don't remember if it was from our group or not, but I know that it talked about in part of the transition into high school where some students had the opportunity for like dual credit early on, like in their freshman or sophomore year. And there's the learning management systems being used, and even like Google Docs and things that a lot of the school districts use when they or Schoology, things that the high schools use that the middle school kids were not prepared for, on like doing an online test or online labs or things like that they weren't quite ready for. I remember talking it may have been my table. I don't really remember. It was a whole like 2 months ago, but I think that's where it was, just exposure to the type of technology they would be experiencing in the learning mediums, really kind of like with the technology versus the hands-on and all the different things. But it was just talked about the students being exposed to those opportunities so they weren't so overwhelmed. Especially since during COVID, one of the conversations was a lot of students were handed, their computers. I can't think of the name of it.
Chromebooks.
Yes, thank you. Of all things to forget, but Chromebooks. But some felt really overwhelmed because they really didn't know how to use a lot of the things. Just because they are gamers or they're comfortable with social media didn't mean that they were comfortable with other platforms or things. But whatever works best.
I think Lou's wording, I think that came from Lou. I think that's good.
Mhm.
Yep, I like that.
Yeah, huge improvement.
I gotta pop off. Sorry.
Oh, it's huge help, Lou. Thank you so much.
thank
Bye,
you so
friends.
much.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
So I think we're down, Robin, to about one more.
Yeah, and the last one is simple. Are we okay to use peer mentors from IG to support middle school and high school students? We want to leave that one. It's the only one we didn't wordsmith on this slide. I don't know if it's one of those best practices we want to pull up to the top, or if we want to leave it as its own.
I can't say, I don't really know what a restorative discipline policies is, so.
I think I would leave it at this point just to see what the feedback is. And let's see, we'll send this out to you for any
Okay,
other thinking on it.
all right. Well, this last one is pretty simple. It's just got the one item on it.
So Robin, did this one come from, just because I don't remember, where it says IG access to attendance records, but is that relevant for middle school going into high school? Is that what they were talking about? Can you just jog my memory? I know we just read through these, but I'm gone a blank on this one.
I don't remember specifically about the attendance records. Although the GPA, those readiness indicators, attendance is one of those strong predictors.
Yep.
I'm wondering if that, if that should be included.
I remember discussion, I've heard discussions of this and I think they'll use longitudinal data to maybe to identify predictors or something like that. But GPA was one, and then attendance was another one. But I thought attendance is more about from high school to college, as being ready to go to college. I wasn't thinking from middle school.
Well, I was wondering if maybe this IHE should have been more data sharing about those GPA and attendance records coming from middle school to high school.
Those records are all available to them, at that level. So I think it's what the people that don't have it are the higher education schools that don't have those records. But from the middle to the high, they would have those records on students that transferred from within Kentucky.
But I'm wondering, Dee Dee, do you think they use those? Like when we're thinking about ninth grade on track, do high schools really look at attendance and GPA coming out of middle school for that reason? And is that what is being recommended, that they get better at using that data?
Yeah. I don't know what, from higher education, I think they can use it to help. But from the high school, I don't know what they're going to do. I know what they're going to do with it. Because, that goes back to parent engagement, things like that, because the parents are getting them to school.
I'm wondering if this really ties into from slide 2, the ninth grade on track definition and framework. I wonder if it's some looking at see where it says early trick, or especially with triggers that begin early in 3rd grade. A lot of that is attendance and even just some academic performance on that. I wonder if we incorporate the longitudinal data to go in with the revisit or reconsider definition of ninth grade on track. What do you guys think on that? If not, say heck no, Ellis, you're crazy.
It fits. It sounds like from that last slide that where the IHE is wanting attendance data, is that, and if they were, couldn't they make that as a part of their admission if they really wanted it? I don't know. I don't know the
IHEs really look at it. That's why I just don't remember the conversation around it, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that fits into the purview of ninth grade on track. That is really more talking about first year success and that transition point later on. So I kind of like, Amanda, I like your idea of incorporating use of data systems that are going to help you, kind of define.
Yes.
Autumn, were you trying to say something? It sounded like you were going to come in with a comment.
No, I had to join again and then it popped up. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
So I agree with what Amanda said, working it into ninth grade on track, just because if you're working in ninth grade on track, you do have the, 3 to 4 years to try to get them to understand the importance of showing up before they get into college.
So I almost wonder if we should grab this thing here at the top of just using longitudinal data and putting that as part of the one that we had here, under reconsidering the definition.
That's what I'm wondering.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I struggle with
say,
the way that's worded, because I think we got to work on that.
Yeah, I don't think it can increase GPA, but it can.
I don't either.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if it could.
Yeah, I would just say determine readiness and or success indicators. Yeah.
Okay. So
I don't know.
We're just going to get rid of.
Yeah,
that part?
I would.
Okay.
Actually, I feel really good about the 2 recommendations with the success pieces in there, because there's a lot of lift in that. And I think things that haven't had attention in a really long time. So
So if we're using that, use longitudinal data to determine readiness and or success in it, should we put an IE GPA/attendance to bring some emphasis to two areas that really are strong predictors?
Just making a few notes in there. And so is this, when we say use, I'm going to go back to the who is this for? So are we going to say to encourage the use of longitudinal data? Is that, or elevate it, or?
Or leverage? I mean, because they've
Yeah.
got the longitudinal data just in the Infinite Campus system.
I like that.
Mhm.
Leverage the use of longitudinal data to determine. Just add up in there after use.
So do we want to say post-secondary readiness and or success indicators?
I wouldn't even say post-secondary readiness, because if we're doing this for ninth grade on track, it's really high school readiness. Like if they're ready
I
to transition.
I would just say readiness. I mean, I'd leave it at just readiness,
Just readiness?
because
Okay.
the reality is, if you what you would hope for, and maybe there's a way to word this somehow to get to that point, but to improve some of these outcomes and some during high school, so that they are ready for post-secondary. But you've got to do the work at high school. You can't just wait till it gets to post-secondary.
Mhm. So do we want to put, instead of determine, or in addition to determine, do you think do we want to improve readiness or improve results, or
I like improve.
leave it? Okay.
No, I like improve. I mean, I like to add, instead of determine, put improve, because that gives them more, because it does give them some expectations associated with it.
All right.
Well, I really, really appreciate this. Robin, is there anything else you want to capture from the group?
The only other thing, Amanda, that we kind of had on our to-do list today was then to go back and say, okay, we've got 4 things on this slide, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we got
Okay.
10 altogether that we're saying these are important things. But does this group have any comment about what's most important? Do we want to go there or not go there? No? Okay. We'll just raise these to the CEC and see what they say about it. Okay.
Yeah. I really like some of these. I think they're thought provoking and really push on it. And I really like the overlap that Lou brought up, and Melissa, you had talked about as well, with the United We Learn, the MTSS work. So if you think of, Melissa, putting you on the spot, but with a fresh eye, if you think of stuff of like, we already have this. We already have this, that we can elevate this, or we can, if you all could get this to more audiences, or, success stories we can communicate, things like that, please do not hesitate. Same for you, Autumn, like anything going on with ninth grade, with Gear Up and things that you guys do with that transitional piece. Like if there's some real promising practices or data you have, or ideas, don't hesitate to go, I've been thinking about that and I don't think this makes sense, or I'd really like to add this. Please don't hesitate, because this is not a written in stone. Nothing can be changed. It's draft and it's suggested actions, and I really appreciate the connections that were made today. I think it makes it more robust, a little meatier, and have true meaning. And so, and what Robin and I talked about earlier is that very few people ever talk about freshmen. Nobody talks about middle school and nobody talks about freshmen. But if it's such a predictor, as Dee Dee said, and she's right, it's a huge predictor. We need to, we gotta bring some emphasis on it. And before Jan left, Melissa, I know what a struggle it was for folks to see how to have intervention teams in middle and high school, and it just doesn't work. And it does. It's just harder. but worthy. And so if there's any other connections after you've had time to think about it, or, anything that you would suggest, don't hesitate, because we want to get this right. And to also be clear too, is this is not Robin and me leading this at all. This is literally like compiling it and then getting people on board. And so it will come to KDE to like review and go, yeah, we do this, or we don't do it that way, but we do it this way. And so, we definitely want to honor that and put it in the right hands and help support in any way. So we just are the conveners and the compilers of information, and push on things we should all be thinking about. So other than that, is there anything else you all want to share or want us to consider?
I will drop this, what we did today, I'll drop it into the work group folder for November, so that if you all have any ideas, you want to go back to it or whatever, you'll be able to access what we did in the PowerPoint today.
And then after it goes to the CEC, then then what's the next?
Yeah, so
Thought.
the next thing is what we will do is we'll put this, like I said, in the hands of the K groups and the agencies who lead the work, and go, what do you think is feasible? Like, is this something that you could tag on that we can already start working on? Do we need to seek funding? Do we need to advocate for funding or any kind of change, policy change, or legislation? Is it something we can do across team and get this started? It's kind of the next steps. So what the continuum typically does is they review all the recommendations and suggested actions, and they'll go, out of all this, we really want you to focus on this first. And so they kind of prioritize the recommendations. And then based on their prioritization of that, of what they really want us to look at, then we start to put it into action. So that's where we want to move away from just a work group of like compiling recommendations and turn them into more like task force of action oriented. So, you see a lot of things on there around communication. Well, Tony can do all the communication that she wants with her huge team, but we could certainly help her, right? Like, so she may lead, Tony has no idea I'm talking about, but she could lead excuse me, a charge of communication directors of going, this is what Melissa said, we really need to elevate. And this is, can you all help us get the word out? And so we could do that, or we could lead a community of practice that incorporates higher ed and secondary, or Gear Up, because Gear Up's in our schools. May say we have this convening of these great promising practices, and we can share what's been working. Or we do a bridge program, let us share what we do, things like that just kind of start to pull the troops together. We already have a data team. So like Dee Dee is already fully aware of like what we talk about from all the different groups. So we have like Dee Dee from KDE, we have Travis Muncie from CPE, and we have KY Stats. So they're all together going, oh, well, we could do this. We already have this data. And so it's really, Melissa, just start compiling people to do the work and put it into action. But because we can't do it all, we let the continuum prioritize that. And then we do the same. And so that's how we start to put things into action. So, which is like herding cats, but it's the important work, right? Because everybody can come up with great ideas, but to actually get it going with people from all different agencies and entities is a struggle, but it's worth it. And there's a lot of things we learn from each other that we didn't even know was happening in the state. So a lot of times it's not even creation of stuff, it's elevating what's already there and sharing the word. So, so that's kind of where we are. So we'll keep you guys posted of where it goes from here. And if they have further questions, sometimes they'll say, we just like to know more about research around this, right? Like what they may say, what is MTSS? Like, what does that even mean? And what does that look like? And I mean, it could be any kind of thing like that, or have we talked to students about their experience or whatever. So we're able to bring back some qualitative data and quantitative data with our teams and share the picture. And then they can go, we really are interested in X, or we realize this scholarship's not being taken advantage of at all. Why? Well, nobody really knows about it, right? Or whatever it is. So it's just really a collaborative group coming together to eat the elephant one bite at a time to strengthen our pipeline. So I hope that makes sense. I know you've been thrown in baptism by fire, but I so appreciate your fresh eye on it and your perspective. It's really helpful.
I think it makes sense. And so now I just wait till you give another extend an invitation. Okay.
We will meet on the 14th of December. So Robert and I will scurry and compile all these and make sure they're clean. And then we'll go through it with the continuum on the 14th. And then we will be contacting people probably in January of like next steps of where we'd like to go with it. But you'll probably, Melissa, you all at KDE and Dee may even see it before and go, yeah, we already do this, or this is the person you would want to talk to, or I would love for this person to talk to you guys about what we do here. I mean, I know Dr. Foster does a lot of stuff around some of this, so we don't want to exclude anyone, but we just want to get a prioritization first, and then we'll be in contact because we'll need you. We need KDE on this one hard because this is really your all's land, but we want to support it because it matters. It feeds into our workforce and it feeds into, you know, our gear up work we do. It feeds into higher ed and, you know, all the pieces and parts. So this is really important that we get it right. So. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thank you. all.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being on, and I hope you have a good afternoon.
Thank you all.
Good to see you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.